Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome back to Reality Bytes, the DEX show within a show. A little bit of a skeleton crew for you today, but an absolutely fantastic topic. And I think long-term listeners know that when we have a skeleton crew, often we have some of our best discussions. We've got a fantastic, relevant topic to discuss, which is augmented reality work. Have I got that right, Sean? It's augmented reality. That's the theme, right?
Augmented reality. You nailed it.
Yeah. And I'm excited today to hear what on earth an exoskeleton is. But with regards to the theme, yes, this is it. There's a different phrase we should use: the augmented connected workforce, and that is Gartner said is one of the top 10 strategic technology trends for 2024, and it encompasses all kinds of really future-facing things. I mean, just I'm going to go to Oriana very soon, because Oriana is probably the person with the most direct experience of what this actually means. But Sean, let me just start by asking you, because you brought this topic to our attention for the show today. Do you agree with Gartner that it's going to be an actual trend or an actual big thing discussed in 2024? Or do you think they're maybe over-egging it just a little bit there?
I think they're possibly over-egging it. I think it really depends on the industry in the area, the work sector. So perhaps in engineering, architecture firms, things like that, I could see it having a bigger influence. But in your traditional office jobs, maybe not so much. Although I do think in the areas of like onboarding and training, that's what kind of piqued my interest. Their statistic, I think they said over the next 4 years, they're suggesting that augmented reality will help lower time to competency by 50%, which I think I could see that playing out, especially in the first 2 weeks when you tend to, or the first month of any new job, you have a lot of questions and you probably need a little bit more hand holding. But yeah, there's a lot we can dive into this with our guests today.
With our guest today, we haven't got a guest, Sean. It's just us. It's just us.
Well, our usual. We're all just guests.
We're all guests here in the DEX show house. Yeah, maybe so. But actually, so Oriana, I will come to you first of all, because I feel like you're a resident gamer. More, I'm not saying nobody else plays computer games. That what you say is a gamer, but I feel that you're the most passionate one, and I suspect that you have the most direct experience of what this technology actually looks like to be inside, so to speak. Do I have that right? Well, I don't know. You don't necessarily know if it's compatible.
Yes, and I'm feeling slightly called out because my experience, as you very aptly noticed, is absolutely from a gaming perspective.
Yep, sure.
But also a little bit from an academic perspective. It's a topic I'm very interested in.
Well, tell us. So as somebody who games, tell us. Mm-hmm. How big a part now of like your recreational gaming augmented reality is, maybe some of the highlights, maybe some of the shortcomings as a kind of a recreational thing?
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about AR, I will say it's not something that I've used like extensively compared to maybe some other modalities. But I do think it's very exciting. And maybe in case people aren't familiar, especially the non-gamers who are like, what even is this? It might be helpful to distinguish AR and VR, because I think they often get brought up in the same breath. So VR, or virtual reality, is where you put on the headset, you have goggles on, your vision is full, you're completely submersed into another digital reality.
Okay.
AR is augmented reality. You're in the real world. You're not wearing goggles. Although Google Glass is actually an example of augmented reality. Mm-hmm. But you can see the world around you. You can hear the world around you. But there's an additional layer on top of it that's providing you additional information. So that's sort of like a practical definition. I think the other analogy that's super helpful and maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek is VR is the metaverse. People got super hyped about it, but it's not really being used.
Mm-hmm.
AR is Pokemon Go. People thought it was extremely silly, but it got huge adoption very, very quickly.
I love that analogy, Oriana. Question for you. So, as a gamer, what proportion of your gaming is conventional gaming? You'd have to give me very precise percentages here. I'm not going to follow up on it. But what percentage is conventional gaming, is augmented reality gaming, and is virtual reality gaming?
So, to be honest, right now I am a very conventional gamer. I play almost exclusively PC games. I also do play virtual reality games, and especially in the past few years, I've played a lot more. I would say maybe 10 to 25% virtual reality, which because I just happen to have that in my life, which makes it a lot easier to do it regularly.
Right.
And a few years ago, actually pre-Pokemon Go, the company that made that game made another game that I was very enthusiastic about for a few years. And at the time, I didn't really have a lot of time to play games. This was when I was a student. So that was the only game that I was playing, was this augmented reality game.
Got it. And so let's I could sort of talk to you about this all day, actually, and I wouldn't mind having a go at some of these games. Give me a little more ground to stand on if I discuss it. But let's seek into the world of work a little bit, and the digital workplace. From there, we'll jump into DEX a little. But Oriana, again, first of all, what stands out to you about this transition into the workplace? And I don't know, maybe the degree to which you're skeptical of its short-term impact, or you're really excited about it, or what you think that looks like.
Yeah, so I think there's really great opportunities with AR specifically because, among other things, it's a lot easier to integrate into existing experiences than VR, right? VR completely takes you out of your environment. It's very expensive, it's very clunky, it doesn't work for a lot of people. And again, I use it regularly, I like it a lot, but I don't find it very practical for a lot of applications. I think the practical applications are often very individual and specific to both time and location, right? So there's some great therapeutic benefits or applications for VR. But in the workforce, you need to be interacting with other people. You need to be interacting with your environment, with your tools. And that's the beauty of AR, is that it's just an additional layer of support to what you're already doing. That makes it much easier to adopt, among other things, right? It's enhancing, not replacing. And I think that's huge when it comes to convincing people to use it, and also its relevance.
Yeah, totally agree. Even I don't feel particularly scared at the prospect of trying a little AR, but whereas virtual reality does indeed alarm me slightly. Thanks for that, Oriana. Dina, what about you? Have you got any first-hand experience with this technology yourself, first of all?
Only on a very small level, like user friendly kind of level. The differences are huge between using augmented reality or anything else like virtual reality and others. However, using VR into architecture, into looking into how you get to visualize things more and get the feel and look of it is a little bit different from an experience perspective on what you get using augmented reality and trying to zoom in, zoom out, and do those 360 stuff. Where now, even when you try to buy some furniture or things around the house, you can still get a 360 view and you just click on it. Most of the new smartphones can do that as well. And then it puts whatever you're trying to position in the house. You get to see measurements, everything. So I think experience is different, and how we are doing so many things from an e-commerce perspective or purchasing perspective and day to day is getting a little bit different with a better hang of things. Is it going to be furthermore improving, or how fast it's going to be? I think that's what we're going to see next, on how fast people are going to adopt it and how we can be quicker taking in that technology in our day to day.
And talk to us about where you think the the specific evolution of the digital workplace is going to be impacted, and where that brings the wider issue here of digital employee experience into this picture?
I think it's, well, so it would depend on which side are we looking at it from. So it's going to be from the user perspective. Initially, it's going to be a little bit hard for people to adopt it, just like any other change. And from the IT perspective as well, to be able to measure things more and look into how the interactions and experiences of the end user is. But all in all, like every other change, it will take a little bit of time until everybody's more comfortable and get used to it. And I think having the feedback now is quicker. Being able to report back on lags or issues or whatever we can detect from an end user or digital employee experience perspective could be much more impactful, let's say, or faster to address, rather than back in the days where we used to be more reactive than now we are more proactive.
Mm, mm. I got another, before we go on to Sean and even back to you as well, Dina. Another question for Oriana. I mean, Oriana, thinking about this technology, how do you see it impacting work itself? Like, not just as an isolated phenomenon, but as part of what we discuss on the show a great deal around around AI and other sort of forward-facing technologies. Do you see them all sort of flowing together? And how do you think this kind of completes or adds to that larger picture of the changing nature of work, not even the workplace, but work itself?
I think the way it's going to change work is going to be very subtle compared to some of the other big changes we're seeing. That's my prediction. And I do think that it's not going to be the kind of very visible revolution we've seen with other emerging technologies. I think a lot of it is going to be in places that aren't quite so flashy. For example, a big application could be warehouses, right? And that's something that isn't terribly visible to most consumers. Um, is tracking stuff in big warehouses. That's not particularly newsworthy to most people, but it will be potentially extremely widespread. So I think that's one of the things with AR that is why it doesn't get as much press. And I don't necessarily expect to see a huge uptick in the next year for that, although it'd be interesting if it does. I think it's going to be more of this background stuff that becomes more widespread slowly, and then people realize suddenly, oh, this is everywhere, and it has a million different applications, kind of like the more strategic levels of IT. And I don't necessarily have a clear sense of what the use case would be in IT specifically. I do see a lot of the use cases being um, in for example, we were talking about architecture and things like that. I was just going to say also, I think there's some really interesting opportunities too that are not going to be the first to be explored, but that there's a lot of potential in enabling a really diverse workforce. So one of the early researchers of um, augmented reality glasses, Thad Sterner, also has done a ton of research in accessibility technology and how do we enable people with different physical needs to interact with the world, to interact with technology. And I think that's a really cool application that, again, isn't necessarily going to get a ton of hype because a lot of it isn't going to be super widespread, or the things that get the most hype are the least relevant to the vast majority of people because they're huge and expensive and therefore not going to be implemented at scale. It's the little elements that streamline work processes that can be used by hundreds of thousands of people that have the biggest impact in my mind.
Very cool. And Sean, then, kind of similar question as I put to Dina, which is, how do you see this impacting DEX and our kind of space specifically going forward? And what do you think? What do you think the implications are for IT and what IT might be doing or should be doing to kind of prepare for this next stage in the ongoing kind of technological revolution around the workplace?
So I think it's going to be probably incremental changes, like everyone was saying. I don't think we're going to see like a huge shift in one particular technology, but probably one thing that came up when I was researching a little bit about this for IT that's probably even being used now is helping them, or folks who are at least looking at the actual servers. So monitoring data center facilities, when you have outages, it can be extremely beneficial to just get eyes on what's going on to the actual physical structure, especially if it's in like a remote location or something, and you can't actually get there in person. And then just for kind of like, again, back to thinking about us and what we do for work, working for a software company, kind of the traditional office environment, I would love to see this. If there's going to be something in between in person and doing calls on Zooms and Teams without having to go to like the metaverse. I don't want to
Mhm.
do complete virtual reality, but thinking almost along the lines of like hologram Star Wars type of style, where you can get a group meeting, which I feel is like the only downside sort of remote working at times, when once you get like more than two people on a call, as we all know, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, working remotely. It is really, you do lack certain things that you would in person. Just like
Mm.
you lose all those senses and sensory skills that you have. And you don't really know what everyone's doing behind their screen. So if there's some way to merge that, or fill that gap, I think that would be huge in the next couple of years. But I don't know. I'm optimistic.
You want to know what everyone's doing behind those screens, Sean? That's what you're saying.
No, just in the room, I guess. You know what I mean?
You want
Like
to check off on
if
everything.
if they're nodding off, you miss certain social cues. I feel like when you're just kind of staring into a computer screen and talking to someone 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. I quick quiz for you then, Sean, because you brought the topic to us. So, what is an exoskeleton exactly?
So I believe an exoskeleton is something that assists like in industries like manufacturing or architecture, engineering. So it's sort of a robotic assistance to help you do heavy lifting, things like that. But it should be a better definition, which is like something that crops up in Halloween, or I don't know, is in your closet to scare you at night.
It does sound good, doesn't it? And okay, what's computer vision exactly? I don't think the terms come up in the discussion so far.
Computer vision is an application of AI as well as AR. So, computer vision is using computers to basically look at stuff and try to identify it and understand what's happening. So, analyzing images, trying to identify what's in the image, trying to understand maybe what's going on in the image. So, there's some interesting applications there, as you might imagine, for a lot of different fields to try and use computers to identify stuff in images and videos, things like that. So I want to mention one of the cool things with exoskeletons is actually that they don't need to be robotic. So there's very different levels of like how technologically complex it has to be. So the simplest exoskeleton can, for example, support somebody who has to kneel or sit for long periods of time or stand for long periods of time, especially while, like we're saying, doing very physical labor. So this is getting at that sort of concept of like you can enhance an experience and enhance what a person can do in ways that are more subtle versus like the very extreme end of that is like an actual huge cage around your body that's like carrying tons of weight and can do all kinds of different tools and things like that. That's sort of the more sci-fi vision that we have of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And speaking of sci-fi visions, one other thing that keeps coming up is when you read into this topic is the whole concept of kind of just alluded to it there, of robots being increasingly involved in our working lives. And Dina, you are our official robot apocalypse correspondent here on Reality Bites. So where does this fit into your overall picture, and how do you anticipate the kind of the robot presence in the workplace to be developing over the next few years?
So I'll take it into phases. I think that's how evolution takes place. So let's be a little bit out there, cyborg
Yeah,
wise.
yeah.
So we're gonna be half and half, which is something that you already have. You just don't use it that much, or you don't highlight it that way. Where we have prosthetics, where we have aided devices that would help us function at our best capability that we know about in our human power for now. So in a little bit, and I know that there are lots of researches that are already there where we can do some enhancements to our genes, to our capabilities. So kind of making ourselves a bit of a superhuman in the way. So if we're working on that side for the existing human beings to enhance their life experience, then we are more or less doing the same for the robots or bots or the artificial intelligence that we have in place. So building off of AI where you have a brain, then you're going to try and replicate the same experience a human being is doing as well. So we should be having more and more artificial intelligence, and if you want to have them in robots, that's fine. I think robots, it's just like a very old term now. It's just going to be a artificial intelligent brain doing something at the workplace that will be helping us. So starting with the GPTs, doing more and more of robots who would be having artificial intelligence brains, maybe sitting next to us in our offices, not offices, where we use AI assistances, etc. So we are already starting to use that in the workplace, where you have assistants taking notes or the captions that are being automatically generated now live in your Zoom calls, etc. So it is there. It is coming to live. I don't think it's very like sad or apocalyptic-y when it comes to that, but it will evolve faster, I think. That's my personal thought. The more we start to adopt, the more we provide feedback, the quicker it will enhance itself, and then we will be able to use it more in the workplace.
Wonderful last words, Dina. I like that we have, I'd like that we got to at least touch upon the robot apocalypse as well. This is a dominant recurring theme now of the future-facing DEX Show episodes, reality Bytes episodes, I should say. And thanks to Sean for bringing a great topic, and thanks to Oriana for bringing some actual, real, the most hands-on experience with AR and so many insights. It's been great. So it just remains for me to say thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys. That was
Bye,
great.
guys. Thank you. Cheers.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.